Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we are going to let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers at home. And we're going to start with you, Miss Angela R. Watts. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers?
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Angela. I'm a freelance editor, science fiction and fantasy author, along with some other genres and artist. So great, happy to be here.
Frankie standing next, we have Mr. Declan Finn.
Also, I freelance edit. I'm also an author. I will write in any genre not nailed down, and I have almost. Currently, I specialize in urban fantasy. That's about half my output, and I'm trying to get a build up my military science fiction creds. I've been nominated for some awards. Currently working on a book with Blaine Pardo in his Land and Sea series. I run a review website called Upstream Reviews. And that's more than enough, I think.
So since this episode is going to be, just the 2 weeks before Christmas, check out Upstream Reviews. I'll throw that link in the show notes. If you're wondering what book to buy the people you like, you could peruse the reviews and see what you dig. And the good news is they don't review stuff they don't like. So everything there gets a positive review because life's too short for bad books, man. All right, next we have Mr. M.D. Boncher.
How do? Back once more to torment the general populace and the villagers. I'm a writer, a musician, and a half-assed graphic designer that has fallen into writing for fun and attempting profit.
So what you need to do is you need to channel your inner Mike Tyson. We don't go half-ass. We go full-ass here on the Blasters and Blades podcast.
The whole ass.
The whole ass.
That's a lot of ass.
Both cheeks.
Both cheeks flapping in the wind. Gotcha.
Damn right.
And the new leaked information, by the way, is Jake Paul is now going to challenge Jimmy Carter to a boxing match.
He's almost dead.
Jimmy's got him on the reach.
Carter's still got that dog in him. So how much is Jimmy Carter getting paid to throw it?
I don't know. All right.
$1 million I'll throw a fight. I can destroy Jake Paul.
So other than music and, selling your soul to the devil, writing stories, what else do you do?
Well, that's my major occupation right now is doing that. And, yeah, those are my major occupations. Music writing and artwork. I used to do logistics, but I haven't been able to find companies willing to work in Southern West Virginia. For some strange reason, they want to be in populated places. I don't know why.
Crazy that. Next, we have the one, the only, the many voices and many personalities of Mr. Michael LaVoice.
Pardon me, Mac.
Hi. Michael LaVoice, author of Galaxy's Most Wanted, as you can see behind me. I don't normally use this as a background, but my back's killing me, so I'm in the comfy chair where I do most of my writing tonight. I got a new series coming out in January, hopefully, called Gladius Leagues. That's being put out by Chris Kennedy Publishing. I'm also working on a Space Navy deal with Peter Stanley, the irrespecter of time zones extraordinaire. Because he's a Kiwi and he has no respect for any time zone other than his own. And working on a new series, plotting that out for based on some characters that I've recently had published in some short stories through Henchman Press for Tales of the E4 Mafia, the Charlie Hawk stories. That's military sci-fi. So I dabble in fantasy as well.
All right. And, I actually made the mistake of complaining to Nick and Stabby about the irrespecter of time zones, Mr. Peter. And they had no sympathy on account of I've done that to them.
No, none. Because you're bringing my shit at 5 a.m., dude.
In my defense, it's not 5 a.m. for me, all right? Jeez.
I don't care, man. I got a brother that lives in Alaska, dude. So.
All right. Next, we have Mr. Nathan Tycho Abrahams.
How's it going? I have written a little. I've sold less. I do a lot of things I don't get paid for. Most recently, I've been helping develop copy and mission statements for a nonprofit that a friend of mine's running. So if you're interested, check out Grassroots Academy. They're doing some interesting stuff, and I've been helping out in the back end a little bit.
Okay. What exactly is Grassroots Academy?
So Grassroots Academy, I can't describe it as well as the guy who started it, but basically it's something designed to take at-risk youth and give them access to the skills they might not ordinarily have access to. So most recently, they brought a kid out, and they taught him like some basic hunting stuff, safe weapons handling. They got him some time in the range. And they sent him and his mom home with a care package of sorts. I'm not privy to the details. I wasn't there, but that's kind of the general way things go.
So paying it forward, I really dig it. All right. And the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we first found them. So we were actually all gathered together. We were drunk on the good stuff, the liquid potatoes. And then we decided it'd be a good idea to discuss and record a podcast. But don't worry, we're totally sober.
Wait, I did forget my disclaimer.
Oh,
I do generally give a disclaimer when I'm on this podcast because it's a podcast that's billed as a bunch of crazy veterans. I am not a veteran, so I do like to clarify that before anyone tries to jump on. Tycho was on this podcast saying he's a veteran. I am not. I was not. I did not.
Fine. We'll have to pull up the slack on the crazy on your behalf. Got it.
But did
I have
Herman
full
get
faith
a
in you.
chance to intro himself? I don't remember. Did I miss that? Did
Who?
Herman get a chance? Herman.
I'm pretty sure we were talking so long in the pre-show. I might have just thought I asked you. So I'm going to blame Declan because he's right below you in the squares. And Herman, if you want to introduce yourself to the list.
You fooled no one.
Herman Hunter, obviously the underachiever and the wallflower of the group. I write what's considered Christian fiction, Christian fantasy. I call it Christian-esque because it holds a lot of Christian themes, but it's not explicitly Christian. So, and I don't do any editing or voices. I'm pretty boring.
You do good. You do Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
All right. And now that
that clicks.
Now that that's out of the way, we do have to do the religion question. But since everyone's been here before on this show, and it's, the holiday season is coming up, we're going to theme the questions appropriately. So I know we're recording this the week before Turkey Day, so you're anticipating a food coma. So pay it forward just 2 weeks after that and start thinking about Christmas vibes. And what is your favorite holiday dessert, Angela?
Pumpkin pie. It's still Christmas. It's still Christmas.
No, pumpkin pie, totally legit. I dig it. Do you put the whipped cream on it or no?
Yeah, way too much. But I mean, come on, it's fine. It's
The holidays.
Yeah,
live a little.
So I was told by my nutritionist that as long as you're good the week before and the week after, calories don't count on holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving.
I want to meet this nutritionist of yours. That's different than mine.
They lie.
Well, I mean, he's been helping me. I'm down 70 pounds, so he must be doing something right.
Nice.
So, all right. Thank you.
He's not happy that I'm cheating.
So next we have Mr. Declan. What is your favorite holiday dessert?
Normally pecan pie. And you put on enough whipped cream to cut the sweet, especially where I wind up buying pecan pies, because good God, otherwise you're going to end up in a sugar coma.
I now see why our wives say we need to be friends.
All right. You can't go wrong with pecan pie. So do you do it with the ice cream or the whipped cream?
Normally the whipped cream because, again, so much sugar in the pecan pie to start with. You get a low sugar whipped cream, or just whip it yourself and don't put any sweetener in it, and it's like, okay, it all balances out, kind of.
So I feel like we need to get
Carol.
We need to get the Quaker Oats guy as like a soundboard, and he can talk about the diabetes.
Wilfred
Brimley.
He will always be the Quaker Oats guy to me. All right, Herman, we didn't forget you this time. Holiday dessert.
Yes.
Excellent answer. I can't go wrong with that. Okay, Mr. M.D. Boncher.
Anyway, I'm with Declan on this one. Pecan pie all the way. But come on, you cannot go wrong with basically a pie shell full of caramelized Caro syrup covered in pecans. That's just
Pecan.
with the pecans optional, really.
No. Got to find something to choke on. Little obstructions to help you down. Yeah, I'm all for the pecan pie.
Avoid.
And it's pecan pie, not pecan pie. Why? Because you have a pecan in the truck, not in the kitchen. Okay?
I think it depends on where you're from, but Michael.
Wow.
Oh, I'm on Angela's. I'm on Angela's bandwagon, man. Pumpkin pie all the way. It's a must. It's not a holiday without pumpkin pie for me. And yes, I slather it generously with whipped cream. I've occasionally been known to take a carton of heavy cream and some sugar and make my own. So yes.
Oh yeah.
All right, and Nathan.
Doing holiday dessert, probably apple pie.
All the pies, I dig it. Apple pie is a good one.
You put cheddar on it?
Cheddar.
Oh,
I
yeah,
have once or twice.
Wait. You put cheese on apple pies?
What sort of heathen activity is this?
I've got family from Wisconsin.
That's right. State law. No kidding. It's an old state law. You had to serve it with cheese, cheddar cheese specifically.
Sharp cheddar.
Yep.
Is that like in Idaho where you got to grow potatoes to live there? Is that? No? Okay.
I don't know, man. Like I fought it for the longest time, and then I tried it. I'm like, actually, the flavor palette actually works. It's so good.
Well, as anyone who's read the Redwall books can tell you, cheese and apple does go together.
I take your word for it.
No, try it, dude.
Try it, man.
Come on, LaVoice.
I'll take your word for it there, Ratatouille. Come on.
So we know what to hold down LaVoice at for LibertyCon and feeding him by force.
All right, Nick. What is your holiday dessert of choice?
I'm going to jump on the bandwagon here, even though I feel like I'm not jumping on a bandwagon, but everybody else kind of agreed to this. I'm a pecan pie guy. I love it. Scoop of ice cream heated. The pie's heated. I like the cold, hot flavor palette that we got going on there. Vanilla ice cream. Don't do mint chocolate chip. That'll ruin your freaking day. You'll actually be angry eating a dessert. But you get some vanilla ice cream on top of there, and you're good to go.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, dessert anger? That's the worst kind of anger.
Dessert of anger.
It is the worst kind.
So actually, I answered these because I knew I was going to be asking them, and we had to reschedule the original. So I answered these the first time I prepped, and I put in there pecan pie with vanilla ice cream or fudge was my answer.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Well, you want to know my nuclear deterrent is with the pecan pie is if you get roasted pecans from Buc-ee's. Does everyone know what a Buc-ee's is?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, go on.
Okay, so it is a mega truck stop that has a food
truck.
It's not a truck
Look
stop.
at the man's shirt. He's wearing the Buc-ee's shirt.
Yeah. It is not a truck stop. They banned truckers from it.
Look at the shirt. Look at the shirt.
That's right. I found out from my brother-in-law who drives for Walmart. They have banned trucks from Buc-ee's. It's 4 cars and campers at most. But if you're driving a big diesel, they say that's why they build across from Love's and Pilot, man. They say truckers go there and be awesome. We'll take all the little boys off your hands. But yes,
all right,
we
well,
know our Buc-ee's.
You get roast. They have an assorted.
Finish that story.
Armament of roasted nuts. You get the roasted pecans, and I did this last year. I brought home a whole bunch of roasted pecans, and I gave them to Stabby. And I'm like, "Make me a pie." And she was like a damn.
Stabby goes, "Poof! You're a pie."
That's probably her. And then she stabbed him.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and now favorite holiday song, Angela.
Actually, like the Emmanuel song by For King and Country. It's a little not as popular as others, but I like that rendition.
Okay. You said by who?
For King and Country, like that Christian.
They're
I don't know what
contemporary Christian
genre they
band.
are.
They're CCM. They're on K-Love. They're CCM. I mean, they're okay.
Declan.
Wow.
Oh Holy Night by the Cruise Shadows.
Okay. All right. I'm writing these down for our show notes because I've never. And you said Oh Holy Night by who?
The Cruise Shadows, CRUX Shadows.
Okay. All right. And next we have, and you give me something easy to spell. I'm just, hook a brother up, Herman.
I Believe in Father Christmas by Greg Lake from Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Nice.
I haven't heard of these ones.
Ha.
Okay. All right.
Doing it just to mess with you.
All right. Next, because, we got to mix up the pronunciation just a little bit. MD Boncher.
Looking to die through the kill the host board. Gotcha. Anyway, I okay, so that unfortunately is a complex question for me. Yes. I grew up where I was in a boy choir as a kid, and that meant that our big season was doing the a festival of 9 lessons and carols. And so for me, the absolute number one song that says it is Christmas time is Once in Royal David City. That hymn to me every year is like the Christmas is here. The rest of y'all get out of the way. And so, and I've sung well over 30 times in the Festival of 9 Lessons and Carols with the Appleton Boy Choir, both as a boy and as a man in their master singers. Because I got asked by my dad, who directed it, who went basically, I need a second tenor. You interested? I said, okay, Dad.
And when Dad asks, you say, yes, Dad, I'm interested.
Yeah, no, my best memory of all that with a Christmas song is singing the duet with my father and Good King Wenceslas when I was a boy. So
another one I can't spell. You're killing me on these show notes.
It's for the names.
Hey, you asked the question. Oh.
All right. Speaking of the crazy voices, Michael LaVoice.
Yeah. I have two. A, because I'm slightly schizo, and B, because it goes with my napalm and silly putty personality. And the first one is, of course, Weird Al's Christmas at Ground Zero. The second one is by a slightly less known, but much more, for me, rockin' band, and that would be Reason for the Season by Stryper. That's Stryper. Spelled with a Y.
I mean, I wrote stripper down, but it's because I know you.
Most people do. That's
Close
why
enough.
I decided to say that. But close enough.
Yeah.
You might get a really different web result when you put that in.
Yeah, that's one to the hub. You look that up.
All right. So, given the topic, we'll try to keep this family friendly, and I'm going to ask Nathan.
Oh, I didn't know if you were changing topic because you had the little interjection. We're still on the holiday song, so mine would be "I Wonder as I Wander." I don't have a particular artist in mind, but the version that I always have in mind is my parents and I used to go into Boston once a year for the Christmas Celtic Sojourn put on by WGBH and Brian O'Donovan, and that was one of the ones they would sing there pretty frequently.
Okay. For me, it's anything by the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, just because I dig their sound.
Yeah.
That whole orchestra can't be trans. I'm just saying.
Especially in Siberia.
I mean, it's a lot of snow, not a lot to do. Whatever. We don't judge. Nick.
Yes.
Favorite holiday song, my dude?
All right. It's a parody of Carol of the Bells called Ding Fries Are Done.
No.
That's on brand.
Ding Fries Are Done.
Would you like an apple pie with that?
Here you go, Nick. Nick, this is for you, buddy. True story. Senior year of high school, I was in choir for 4 years of high school, And senior year of high school, we're all set up for the big Christmas concert. And the choir director gets up and she's ready to launch us into the Hallelujah chorus, right? But instead, what she gets is the tenors and basses going with full harmonies, and the bass is like, you should have seen her face. She was like
mortified.
It was so wonderful.
Oh my
Best
Lord.
day of my life in high school.
Oh,
Tell of the
I'm here
Bells is
for it.
awesome to play on handbells.
All right, next we got our
both ways. So
favorite Christmas movie, Angela.
National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation for sure. You have to watch that every year, or it's not Christmas.
A Lady of Class, I can see.
a lady of culture, as I can see.
That's right.
All right, Declan.
Well, I figure it's either got to be Die Hard or Scrooged with Bill Murray.
Oh, Scrooge. Yes.
I don't think I've seen that
Can
one.
we stop?
Oh,
with the
God.
goddamn
You have,
Henry?
Scrooge
if
is
you have
awesome.
not seen Scrooged,
You're
how
Scrooge.
do you live?
What is wrong with you?
I've seen Die Hard. Obviously, it's not Christmas until he falls from the Nakatomi Plaza.
Oh.
You've never seen Scrooge, JR?
No, I haven't. I've never even heard of it.
Bill
Bill
Murray is
Murray?
the Christmas Carol.
The antlers won't stay on the mice. Can you use staples?
All right, Herman.
Well, I'm
You
gonna
will
go-
love it.
I'm going to go with. There's two of them. The comedy one. I'm going to go with Scrooge. The second one, which is a serious one, is the Nativity, and it's a recent. It's a recent movie, or it was produced more recently. Very good movie.
Okay.
Good one.
MD Boncher.
You just can't help yourself, can you?
No, at this point it's a bit. We got to keep it up.
Yeah.
Beat it
It's
to the
a bit.
horse dies and beat it some more.
Yeah. He's dead horse making glue. Back off. Yeah, since somebody took my Die Hard, I'm gonna have to take the other serious Christmas movie of similar and say Lethal Weapon, but that's just my joke answer. I feel like the Hollywood Squares. But yeah, Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie. Deal.
You do get that Paul Lynn vibe from you. Yeah.
Really. That was more of a. I can do a better Charles Nelson Riley.
I want to be CNR. Come on.
Lethal Weapon
but
had
for me,
one of the best writer jokes in there, though. He was writing the female like romancy stuff, and he'd rather them think he was a corrupt cop than admit he was writing romance novels.
oh yeah, that was in the fourth movie.
I thought it was the third. I thought, but
No,
whatever. I just
third?
remember.
Anyway,
watching-
probably favorite Christmas movie. I'm torn, but I'll have to go with Elf of all things.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
That's right. No one said Gremlins.
You disappointed me by not saying your favorite Christmas song was "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch." I mean, you got
the thing is that there is a guitarist called Gary Hoey who's done a metal version of that, and it is fantastic.
Small Town
Metal
Titans
makes
did one
everything
as well.
better.
It's outstanding.
All right, LaVoice.
Elf.
Favorite Christmas movie.
Yeah, I gotta go kick it old school and say Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. I
Say that
forced
one
my
more time.
kids to watch it every single year. Finally got it on DVD.
We get it,
and I was-
voice. You're cool and edgy with obscure references.
yeah,
God.
man. I was incensed
his
though
hipster
because
crowd.
they edited bits and pieces out of it, so I had to go find the original. Finally found it on Blu-ray where the unedited version, so we're good now.
Wow.
We also do Lord of the Rings over the Christmas break, and we, for some reason, we started doing that years ago. And I think it was only within the last 2 years that we allowed the kids to actually talk during the movie. And so we have some nice conversations about it now. Back in the day, it was like, shut up, I'm watching this, be quiet, you know. But yeah.
When they're not reciting the dialogue verbatim.
Yeah, well, they can do that. It was perfectly okay to quote the movie as you're going, but no independent conversations. No.
I see the fear in your eyes, and it tears a heart for me.
All right, Nathan. Favorite Christmas movie.
It's pronounced Tiatarme, sir.
Ha!
Hogfather.
Oh my gosh, I
That's
still
my
haven't
nickname
seen
in
that. I
college.
need to see that.
It's
Never
Yes,
very
you do.
I'm such a Pratchett fan. I need to see that.
Yeah, they got a pretty good death too.
So for me, I'd say the 1964 Rudolph cartoon. So it's the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, or
Almost bounce.
How the Grinch Stole Christmas is another one, or the Santa Claus series, just because they make me laugh.
Right.
Those are
right.
good.
my dad liked those.
Rudolph Shiny, was it Rudolph Shiny New Year? Which was the one where they had Heat Miser and Cold Miser?
No, that was the
That's
year
like-
without a Santa. That's the year
The
without
Year
a
Without a
Santa
Santa Claus. That's one of the best daggum songs ever. I
Yeah.
just love that song, man.
The other one had
Miser and Cold
Eeyore,
Miser.
and that was for New Year's. Or,
Right,
Eon the
Nick.
Vulture.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What's your favorite Christmas movie?
I mean, I wanted to say the Star Wars Holiday Special, but we don't talk about that.
No,
I knew
it
someone
does
was
not
gonna try it.
exist.
It does
remember
not
seeing that
exist,
when I
even
was
though I
little.
have
It's like
a VHS.
This is not
tape
the
that I
holiday
got
movie you're looking
bootleg
for.
at Star Wars Celebration 2. Just saying. I confiscated it as dressed as a biker scout, and they gave it right up. No, my favorite holiday movie, it used to be Scrooge, and then as time went on, it became Elf, and then a new player entered the board, and it's Spirited
Haven't
with
seen
Will
that yet.
Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. I'm not usually into musicals. Freaking awesome, funny, heartfelt. There were tears. Yeah, Rangers cry. I get it, but yeah, it's become a holiday classic here. Now, honorable mention, always Christmas Vacation, because that is played after you've had dessert on Thanksgiving Day. That's the movie playing in the background. That's the tradition here in the old Garber house. So,
All right, and finally, because we do love our coffee brand coffee, we're going to ask the coffee question. So, coffee or tea, and how do you take it during the holiday season, Angela?
I drink coffee and stop, but Christmas time, I buy the peppermint mocha coffee creamer, and I stock up on it, and I drink way too much.
Most excellent answer, my lady. All right. Next we have, and I've got them writing these down as we speak. Declan.
Tea, iced.
So you're a creature of habit.
Sweet or unsweet?
Sweet. What kind of barbarian do you think I am?
I'm a diabetic, so I go unsweet. So I don't know.
No. I use artificial sweeteners, which might be heresy down here, but I don't ask.
We won't tell if you don't tell. All right, Herman.
Just I've been getting into. I usually have a cigar on Christmas, so I usually have like a caramel latte to go with it. So, because I like something kind of earthy and sweet with my cigar.
Okay. All right. So do you have a favorite brand of cigar?
Yes.
All of them?
Yeah, pretty much all of them. No, I'm Avios or Avos, or I forget how they pronounce them. Those are currently my favorites.
I think Angela has a favorite cigar. I'm just kidding.
I do.
Go on.
No.
All right. I'm not judging. All right. Boncher.
I am pretty much my coffee and tea are pretty well agnostic, but occasionally I will lean towards chai. So
tea.
Okay.
Chai, well,
Tea.
the heavily yes, you can stop it, India boy.
You're the one calling it tea. I do not know what you're talking about.
Well, they're the one that add cardamom and nutmeg to it as well. So you back off, Slim. Yeah, and heavily cream it. So I do like
There's so many
that.
jokes right there, but we're gonna move on.
You had an SFW rating until you even thought that.
All right, LaVoice.
Oh, coffee, black.
Like your soul. Dun, dun, dun.
It doesn't change for the holidays.
Man,
Okay.
there's a Krieger joke in there.
All right, Nathan.
I don't actually drink caffeine, but given the debate raging on Twitter right now, I tend to have found myself firmly on the side of the noggers.
Oh. No, I will drink
Eggnog?
some eggnog. Non-alcoholic, but I will drink some eggnog.
There isn't
Okay.
enough alcohol for me to drink eggnog in it.
So I worked at coffee shops to pay for my my master's degree, and I've seen what's in the steam cup after you heat the eggnog for the eggnog latte, and it basically looks like scrambled eggs, and I've never been able to look at it the same way again. I mean, I didn't think it tastes good to start with, but after seeing the end result, I'm like, no thank you.
Well, what kind of a crazy person steams their eggnog?
The people that want an eggnog latte?
It's a really good question.
All right, so for me, it's the peppermint mocha or homemade hot chocolate.
Nice.
The homemade, not like the Swiss Miss or whatever, like homemade. All right, Nick, tell us how you do it wrong. I mean, what do you drink?
What about
Coffee and
you
bourbon.
drink?
See,
The
he's like me.
occasional
It
hot
hasn't
toddy.
changed for the holidays.
No, coffee and bourbon. It's a staple. That's how I became big and strong.
That's what I brush
Build
my teeth
strong
with.
bodies 12 ways. Just like Wonder Bread.
Yeah,
All right,
I try to
all right.
keep it basic.
All right. Have you? No, there's no saving, Nick. All right, so this is the part where
Go
we're
on.
gonna.
No, go on. Finish that sentence.
Well, I realized that it would make the lose the family friendly, but it also would go against.
No,
the
I screwed that up at 24 minutes and 42 seconds. Let's do this.
Yeah, he dropped an F-bomb already. We're done.
But we're going to talk about Christian fiction, so I'll try to keep my heathenisms to myself for the episode, and we're going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shield for the man.
Ho, ho! Oh, hell. Is that sleigh bells ringing in your ears or a few rounds from an M60? You wanted the jolly fat man to bring Yuletide joy, but the season has gifted you with a heartbreaker and a life taker. Badass Santa. Grab your eggnog and camouflage candy canes. Strap on your bulletproof holiday stockings and prepare for thrills and kills. From blood-stained rebellion at the North Pole to a Black Ops raid on a distant planet, these 18 action-packed tales will show you Saint Nick as you have never seen him before. It's all you'll want for Christmas.
All right, Nikki said you had a funny story about this book after the commercial, so.
Okay, so the boy asked me, he's like, hey, Nick, have you written any, like, real books? Apparently comic books aren't real. I don't know. Whatever.
Does that kid really want to not eat? Because that's how you end up hungry.
For real.
Apparently he likes to get slapped around. I don't know. But I just hit him with some knowledge. I'm like, yeah, I did this book that's on Amazon. It's called Sleigh Bells Ring. He's like, what's it about? So I give him the gist. He's like, wait, so like the elves were like using M4s and stuff? I'm like, nah. Rapid repeater crossbows. And he's like, how does that work? So I like explained the science that you and I worked out and how these things work. And I baffled his entire brain because he was like, oh, well, how do you pull the string and get the bolt in there? I'm like, well, this is how we figured it out. And it's kind of like a revolver system. So you do this, all you got to do is charge it.
I've
So
seen
it's-
sketches that are older than either one of us where they were designing this stuff. So it's not even our own idea. We stole from history like all the best people do.
Well, you know how the Magellan generation is. You know, they're always thinking they're discovering shit, but they ain't discovered nothing. So they're like baffled when you tell them like this stuff is a thing for hundreds of years, thousands of years. He's like, oh my God. Like he walked out, just his brain was just imploded. He couldn't wrap his brain around how early humans were able to do this. So I'm like, we did it.
So
Thousands of years? You mean like the 60s and everything?
See, Gen X was fortunate or unfortunate enough to be told pretty much all their lives that time did not start with our birth, thanks to the boomers. So millennials have forgotten.
That's right. It started with
Reminded
boomers' birth.
painfully.
So you're gonna kick out of this, Nick. One of my beta readers, he's one of like the guys that's been with me from the beginning. He reads everything I write. He challenged us to fit in a knife kill, but with a sharpened candy cane in volume 2 that will come out Christmas 2025. I'm like, dude easy peasy.
That was done in the 80s with Silent Night, Deadly Night. Like, come on. Gen X, once again for the win, because we created frickin' everything.
All right, we'll have to one up it then. Like we can do this. All right, so with that out of the way, let's talk about what we brought everyone here today. We're going to talk about Christian fiction. So let's first define our terms. So to be Christian fiction, does it have to be on the nose biblical allegories, or can it just incorporate the biblical principles of life into the story and still qualify?
Well, that depends. Do you want it to be good or not?
Wow.
There's the man. That's who I know.
Well, I mean, good as a
Because if you want allegory and you want to push a message so hard you're choking on it, yeah, sure. You can stuff it down somebody's throat, but I don't recommend it. Most of the things that call themselves Christian fiction and shove Christian fiction at you, just shoot me now. But that's just my opinion. Anyone else?
Not that he has strong opinions or anything.
Go for it, Hedge.
No, I agree. Subtlety. Subtlety is good.
Yeah, there's several different camps about this. Obviously, as a guy who started out trying to write it, overt Christian fiction.
Okay.
I was trying to genre blend detective thriller stories with overt Christian fiction, and it just wasn't working. It could never not come across as preachy, which is I didn't want it to come across as preachy. And so, I mean, I'd read a lot of different authors, and the guy that got the closest, I think, just my opinion, I could be wrong. To me, the guy that got the closest to actually writing fiction that had a Christian message, but wasn't smacking you in the head with it, was Ted Dekker. Because he wrote some really bizarre stuff. It was kind of cool. The color series, Red, Black, Green, White, the Showdown series, those were pretty cool. 3 was a psychological thriller that I somehow never finished. But he got close, and you could tell there was a Peretti influence, but he didn't get as overt as Peretti does. Like Frank Peretti actually has as a plot device in one of his books, angels fighting demons and failing because the Christians aren't praying hard enough. I was like, God, really, dude? Really? Tell me you're a charismatic without telling me you're a charismatic. Anyway, so yeah, there's lots of schools of thought on this, but by and large, for a Christian, most Christians consider Christian fiction is the stuff that's overt, preachy, and okay, let's be honest, doesn't sell very well.
Yeah,
because it's got a very limited audience. And I get it. You want to be preaching to the choir, okay, but at the same time, you're not making anybody think. And I think one of the reasons we got into writing to start with, all of us, is that we want to tell stories that inspire people to at least think a little. I mean, am I wrong there?
Well, I would ask, where would you draw a line between being overt and being preachy? Because what I've found is that a lot of people say, yeah, I like Christian fiction as long as it doesn't try to be too Christian. And that gets further and further pushed back until what they define as Christian fiction isn't actually Christian at all, because they don't actually want to read Christian fiction. They just want to tell you that they read Christian fiction. So where would that line end up?
No, that's a fair point. And I think that there are authors out there. I'm not one of them anymore, but because I switched genres and I've gone sci-fi fantasy, mains just try to be. I do. Well, anyway, the point you've made is well taken, and I think that to have it be strictly defined as Christian fiction, not fiction with Christian elements, or fiction that has a Christian message somewhere in it, but definitely Christian fiction. I don't know that you can get away without at least being preachy a little bit, because most Christian writers that try to do that will tell you that's their mission. They want to preach to people through their fiction. which I okay.
That's
I would-
the key phrase right there, too. They want to preach to people through their fiction, which basically violates a couple of the main points of entertainment. Number one, you've put sermon before story. You're no longer trying to entertain, you're trying to preach. That means you might have a very entertaining sermon, but it is not entertaining.
But
Okay,
I
'cause
will
you're-
say, I will say one guy did it though. One guy that I read, one trilogy in particular, was entertaining. It had great story elements, but it was overtly Christian because you had afterlife stuff going on, people being escorted to heaven or hell, depending on where they were and how they were when they died. But the characters in the story were real. The characters, and there was even a like a noir detective character in one of the books, and this was Randy Alcorn. He did a series called there was the Deadline trilogy. It was Deadline, Dominion, and Deception, and he's a fantastic storyteller. And it was overtly Christian fiction, but I found myself unable to put them down, which is rare for me with Christian writers. So that one I'll say was entertaining.
Otherwise, you got to go back to the granddaddy of all allegorical Christian fiction, and that is going to be C.S. Lewis. I mean, honestly,
There it is. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Everybody's got to bring up C.S. Lewis in this discussion. That's the point.
I would assert you can go back farther if you're looking for the roots of Christian allegory to Pilgrim's
Oh yeah,
Progress.
you could.
Oh yeah.
Bunyan was.
Yep.
Yeah, he did it first.
Yeah, I'm just saying that for the modern novel, people don't look to Bunyan; they look to C.S. Lewis more. And I mean, a lot of people do the same thing with Tolkien. It's like, he actually is a good example of doing entertainment without doing a sermon because of his Christian underpinnings. That his worldview permeates all of his work, but it doesn't take front and center. And to be honest, if you're not looking for it, you don't see it. It's not there. That's why C.S. Lewis would be higher up on that scale because let's face it, Aslan and that pretty much ends the discussion on whether or not it's a Christian allegory or not.
Well, you get that with Frank Herbert too, which is derived from Tolkien.
Yeah, to a degree.
Yeah.
Well, if you want people who are both fun and obviously Christian at the same time, I can name you John C. Wright.
Yeah.
I'm told Clive Barker. Clive Barker? He's the guy who did...
You opened the box, we came.
Sorry, say that again?
You opened the box, we came.
Yeah, him.
Yeah.
Tim Powers. And Dean Koontz. Although Dean Koontz has been getting a little bit... he's been leaning a little bit hard on preachy lately, but most of his stuff has been good.
Do that with the Watchers, though. The Watchers was great.
Okay.
I had no idea.
I'm an older Dean Koontz fan. I haven't read any of his new stuff, so I don't know how preachy it's been getting, but I know his older stuff was kind of like, it was towing the line, but it was more on the not preachy side.
Yeah. Well, I actually read one of his books recently called Deadfall. That's from the early 90s. And it was a cop versus a voodoo bokor, which drove me crazy because that was one of my running plot elements in one of my series. It's like,
I would say that's an author's trope for him. He does love using the cop, the small town beat cop, the small town sheriff. Like, I mean, he's made some really interesting stories with it. But like, there's other protagonists, man. Like, look at those.
well,
you mean like Stephen King and his
series.
writers? Like Stephen King and his writer characters?
Yeah,
the writer,
that
the drunk.
I will say that for Decker, he has a reoccurring character that's an awful lot like Randall Flagg. It kind of bugs me a little bit. It was the one thing about his books that I was like, it's kind of like Randall Flagg here, brother. I don't think you want to go this route.
See, I always preferred Peretti to Decker. I read House, and I could tell who had written which parts, and I liked the parts Peretti wrote, and I didn't like the parts that Decker wrote.
Go ahead.
So it's funny you touched on the most blatant of Peretti's works, that being the Piercing the Darkness and This Present Darkness duology.
Those are the ones for me.
Right. Well, those are also his most well known. My favorite is actually The Visitation. And The Oath is also extremely
yeah.
good. And neither one of those is anywhere near as hammer on nail as the Demon War duology. The Visitation is very excellent in my opinion, simply because one of the main story arc really is this washed up pastor trying to trace the history of a stranger who's come to town, claiming to be the second coming of Jesus. And on his way back through this guy's history, he's going through all of these archetypal congregations, all of which I've seen. Obviously not the specific churches involved because they're fictional, but he goes through a mega church. He goes through like a fire and brimstone Southern Baptist church, which I never personally attended, but back during the Brownsville revival, every AG and Pentecostal church in the nation was a fire and brimstone Southern Baptist church, because that's where the revival was. And all the pastors went down there, got jealous, came back and started preaching fire and brimstone in hopes of catching lightning in a bottle again. So all the stuff that this guy traces the antagonist history back through was all very recognizable to anyone who's grown up in the church. And it was a good examination of it, I thought.
You mentioned House. I got to meet Frank Peretti at Realm Makers 4 years ago, and he was the guest of honor, and of course he did a speech in there, or a Q&A, and he said that in House they discovered that he and Ted discovered that they couldn't stand working with one another, and they just couldn't find things to meet on common ground with. And so Ted basically said, all I want you to do is get the kids in the house. I'll take it from there. And then he's like, done. And that's how they kind of worked together, and then touched base a little bit after that, but after that it was Decker's show. But
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's really, Frank Peretti is very cool. He's actually part of the reason why I decided to write fantasy after reading This Present Darkness. I was like, okay, somebody who gets it from this point of view. And I said, well, if I'm going to write fantasy, I need to write fantasy that I probably, could have used when I was a kid, and mirrored more stuff that I experienced in my own life. And This Present Darkness and the Screw Tape Letters were two of the books that I used as a basis, as kind of the foundational bedrock of my own series for the magic system in the Kinawasi saga. Mm-hmm. So
the one thing I was going to point out is that one of the genres that I think probably relies heaviest on religion would be, I think, horror. And a prime example of that would have been Blatty's Exorcist, which he considered it to be a very sort of religious work. Not so much that it involved a lot of religion, but that it was founded in it. So, and you got a lot of that stuff in horror where they're talking about basic good and evil, and that relates back to a lot of what we have in Christianity, which is a definite fight between good and evil for the end times.
Yeah, and a lot with The Exorcist was almost a procedural, because you go through all of the tests just to get approval for an exorcism. It's like, is what the Catholic Church will do just to make sure you're not crazy, you don't have a parasite, you're not epileptic, you're not X, Y, and Z. And God knows if you tried to do that today, it would probably be expanded just for the additional testing.
One of the great things about that book and the, you talk about the bureaucracy within the, Holy Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go through those steps to make the exorcism rite worthy, and it's still one of my favorite horror movies. It scares the hell out of me to this day. Like, my mom saw it in the theater and she didn't sleep for 3 days, and then she told me all about it, hyped it up, and then I watched it. I slept that night like a baby. Apparently I'm a sociopath or whatever, but
didn't bother me very much.
Scared the hell out of me.
And another one is the Amityville Horror.
Go ahead. Amityville 2, classic one, because he was rocking those tidy whities like there was no business. The remake with Ryan Reynolds, also worthy. Like, we're going to talk horror. We're going to talk about, technically Christian horror, I guess. which is a thing.
Well,
You know,
think about it this way: when The Exorcist being the prime example is, so The Exorcist didn't freak me out too much, except for the quick flashes of Pazuzu showing up. Those are the only things that startled me in it. But the whole story, I had to say I was kind of bummed at the ending, but I understand kind of what happened. That priest should have never been in that situation, and it cost him his soul basically for it. And honestly, that's what that illustrated, and what I think terrified a lot of people that were more susceptible to it than I was, is the idea that God could fail. And
the fallible God,
the fallible God, the God, the God too weak to be able to deal with such evil. And that's what truly terrified a lot of people. And when you strip away a lot of stuff, I think.
So speaking of horror, the other two Peretti books I mentioned, The Oath and also The Visitation, would be examples along that vein. I wouldn't consider the Demon War books to be horror. I'm not even sure how I would define them. They're almost
urban fantasy.
Yeah,
I would have to go with that. Christian urban fantasy.
With a little bit of a procedural bent in that the Marshall Hogan character being the investigator, coming at it from the secular side of things and trying to piece everything together.
So would you consider something like Chronicles of Narnia, which isn't overtly religious but has certain undertones, to be Christian fiction?
Absolutely. I consider it to be Christian fiction.
100%.
You start out with Aslan being the representation of, Jesus. And you have, various periods where it goes through, and then you have at the very end I forget, it was the final battle or something.
The last battle.
The last battle, where you have literally the end of the world, which, sort of mirrors Revelations.
Yeah,
but you have a lot of things in between there, which talks about, the various concepts and the Penavisi kids, and some of the things that they do wrong based on their personalities and how they sort of fail, and they have to kind of like come to Aslan, come to Jesus, but come to Aslan for these things. And especially the first one, Lion Witch, the Wardrobe, really sort of hammers home the concept of not only the crucifixion of Christ, but also the childlike faith. I think it was it Lucy?
Lucy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lucy. The childlike faith of Lucy, where she's being told all the time that she didn't see Aslan. When was it the second one? I think it was the
that was in
one.
Prince Caspian.
Yeah, that was Prince Caspian.
She keeps being told that that Aslan isn't there. She's seeing things, but she insists on seeing them. And she's the only one of them who holds the faith, the absolute belief and faith that Aslan is there to help them and save them, and that she has seen them. But the other ones have grown out of that, and it goes back to sort of the childlike faith that kids have, which I thought it was really kind of cunning the way Lewis did that, sort of bring out that bring up that point.
Yeah, there were Christian archetypes all through that series. I mean, you had Peter as the kind of reminded me a little bit of the prodigal son's brother.
Yeah,
a little bit in the way that he,
Edward.
Why wouldn't I have seen him?
Yeah, why wouldn't I have seen him? That whole kind of a thing. And then there's the younger brother who actually went with the witch and partook of her goods, but still was able to be redeemed at great cost, which is just this perfect representation of the repentant sinner who comes back and tries to get it right. And it's interesting that he was known as the Just, was his title. And you don't become a person known as the Just unless you have a deep and abiding understanding of what real justice is. And that substitutionary sacrifice that Aslan made for him showed him the true meaning of it. And it forever changed him. So yeah, there's huge amounts of Christian allegory all throughout that series, and that was his intent. I mean, he and Tolkien would get in arguments all the time because Tolkien despised allegory, hated it. He didn't want it in his stuff, even though it worked its way in anyway if you look for it. So,
all writers have their own beliefs and understandings work into their own works. It doesn't matter what it is; it will show up somewhere. But something else about C.S. Lewis is, of course, all his fiction are basically entertaining echoes of his nonfiction that he put out. I mean, go through it and it's there. And that's what I mean about although he deliberately had from the science fiction trilogy to Screw Tape Letters and then, of course, the Chronicles of Narnia. Those are, very overt Christian fantasies, but they're also echoes of his nonfiction apologetics work out there too. So
I would consider That Hideous Strength to be borderline prophetic. He wrote it, I believe, in the 40s. And if you read it now, it's like, so you mean to tell me that a group of intelligentsia staged fake riots in order to enforce their authoritarian control over a deceived populace?
That'll never happen.
Napoleon did it. Why not?
Yeah. But hell, when you're working on a level where you're basically looking at elements and just projecting forward a few steps, it's not that difficult. I've actually done it a few times by accident to the point where it's like, you know what? I'm going to get out of this particular strain of thought. I'm going to just do rip from the headlines, because if I do rip from the headlines, I can't predict anything. It's already happened. Trust me, that happens a few times, and it's like, nope, we're not going to do that.
I feel bad for Kurt Schlichter. His Kelly Doesn't series, every time an election happens, he has to go back to his little timeline chart and just throw a bucket of white out at it.
And weep.
Oh boy! So sort of like all the end times prophets out there. I always thought it was
tail
very
on the
interesting.
Antichrist.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I really kind of get my chain jerk hard whenever I think of the late great planet Earth or the Cross and the Switchblade and all those. The end of the tribulation is upon us, written back in the 70s, and
Left Behind is heretical wish fulfillment fan fiction, and I will not elaborate further.
I do not discuss Dim LaHaye.
How'd that Mayan apocalypse work out?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. We all lived through the if we were Christian at that time, we kind of all had to live through the flurry and scurry of the end times freak out that went on from about 95 to 2012. I think that would be about the point where we were dealing with
and about half of that fell away when the people expecting the year
Y2K to do it.
A lot of those folks I guess we were wrong, and they kind of went away. But then the Mayan calendar folks filled that vacuum.
Falling down the staircase of future history.
So obviously we have a panel full of people with opinions, and that has not been a problem. But Angela, you've been a little bit silent tonight.
I like listening. This is a lot of good stuff. I will say I have one question and to see what you guys think. So the question was, would Narnia be Christian fiction? So do we count that as Christian fiction if Jesus or Lord is not mentioned, or would that be an allegory? Do we still count that as the overtly preachy kind of Christian fiction, or is that different?
In C.S. Lewis, he doesn't overtly say that it's Jesus. It's totally
the closest he comes is when he says, "In your world, you will know me by another name." That's the closest we get.
Yeah,
and of course, Aslan is the Lion of Judah.
Yeah,
and,
and at the very least, with C.S. Lewis, I've had friends who are Jewish who have read it, who have this is still a fun story without any of the other context. So it's still good. It's not necessarily preachy, but it's still fun. It can be Christian, but it's not banging people over the head enough that it takes them out of the story.
That is critical right there. the thing that makes C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia work as Christian fiction that non-Christians will read and enjoy is because not once do we get the stereotypical modern writing trope of, well, they've got to have that come to Jesus moment where they say the sinner's prayer and everything in their life gets straightened out. How many times have we seen these? Rick and Morty did a joke about it on one of their episodes. They trashed it. It was the most meta episode I ever saw. And it was glorious in how they absolutely obliterated the modern Christian fiction tropes and used it to win.
To that point, Randy Alcorn, I'll go back to him. The book Deception, book 3 in that series. You have a main character who is not a Christian. If anything, he's like I was before I came to faith. I was a semi-atheistic agnostic. And if you want to know what that worldview is like, it's there is no God, probably. So before, it's been a long road, Nick. I'll tell you all about it sometime. I clep tested comparative world religions on basic life experience. Okay. Anyway, Alcorn has a character. The main character in book 3 is not a Christian and does not come to faith by the end of the book. He's still struggling. And that was very powerful to me because you got all this overt Christian stuff going on around him. Angels discussing him with people that have passed on and are on the other side now and all this stuff. And here's this guy who's still trying to figure it out. And I so identified with him at that point when I read that story, because I read it very soon after I actually became a Christian. And it just resonated with me. It's like, yeah, I know that guy. I was that guy. And it was very cool to have him not make that decision by the end of the book. It was kind of left open. It was very good, I thought.
I will admit that I did similar things in my Akinawazi saga, where people would be given the choice and some would choose wrong and some came around and Anyway, you were saying, Angela?
Well, like, to bounce off of that, do you guys think, like, just a question, do you guys think that to be Christian fiction or, in that ballpark, does the main character have to be Christian? Like, do they have to end up with that, mindset or whatever? Like, do you think that's maybe like a happy medium of reaching new people is not actually to have a Christian main character, but to kind of play around with that?
I think one of the main tropes in Christian fiction is to have a non-Christian main character who either comes to faith or is exposed to it in a way that changes his perspective on it. That's what I try to do. Thriller that I was working on. My main character was not a Christian. In fact, he was an anti-Christian. He was
the conversion.
And he, in my story, the main character does eventually convert, but it's a long haul, and he's not typical.
It can be done right.
Christian either. He's kind of more like me. Anyway, so there's that.
Yeah, another example of that would be in The Oath, where the main character is, again, also not a believer, and actually the one character in the story who is like the crazy old mechanic who lives in the mining town. And the whole time, every time he presents, like, hey, this thing you're dealing with, it's evil. And I know the guy who can stop evil, and you don't, and that's why you keep failing. And he just mocks it. He's like, Levi, you're crazy. By the end of the book, he's like, nope, this is actually evil. It's sort of an exploration of the Solzhenitsyn idea that the line between good and evil runs down the soul of every human. Because he's thinking like, no, I'm the good guy. I'm here to help. I'm just trying to help these people. Surely they'll understand that. No, there's something very evil here, and you're overlooking it because you don't incorporate that into your worldview. And by the end of the book, he has had to realize that. Another example.
That's kind of the world we deal with now, isn't it? Where the line between good and evil is so blurred in culture, Western culture in particular, that, we used to, in evangelical circles, we have this thing where we like to go out and witness to people and try to share our faith with people, which is now translated as shoving your faith down someone's throat. But some of us do it really well, and some of us use our faith like a club. And there's always the extremes on the other end. But my point is that you used to not have to explain what sin was to people. Okay.
The Solomon
I mean,
Kane, for
yeah,
instance, the people
exactly.
Solomon
And
Kane fights, you understand these are evil people.
these are
He
evil
doesn't
people.
have to tell you that.
Now, basically, it's the evangelical that's viewed as the evil person. So
Very
I've
Stephen
been
King
seeing so
novel.
many memes. Yeah, I've been seeing so many memes with that, where basically everything evil is, oh, that's misunderstood. Oh, it's because of this. Oh, it's excused because of that. But organized religion, that is the true and one evil of the world.
Well, that's the one thing
Yeah.
that I'm finding when I go to when I do a lot of these in-person events, and people start asking about the book, because kind of get onto some of the topics of what I write about. And the one thing that kind of comes up, the first thing that they try and figure out how they want to say it is, is it a grim dark novel where there's everything shades of gray?
And there
And
is no hope at the end.
yeah, and I sit there and I go, no, I don't write that. And 9 times out of 10, they get this relieved look on their face, like, I am so tired of all that irrelevant. Okay, well, hey, buy the book. It's right in there.
The moral relativism, I don't think is as popular as it used to be. I think people are going back to, even outside of religious inspired novels, they like the idea of good is good and bad is bad, because fiction should be aspirational and not drag you down in the morass that is the human condition.
Yeah.
Well, they've seen too many of those grim, dark, everything is morally gray nonsense, and they've seen where it has led in terms of fiction. Do I need to say that one HBO show that didn't last very well in season 7?
Oh yeah, Watchmen.
Trust me, that one didn't last.
That was
seasons.
season 1.
I'm not even
was
gonna get a
season
season
1.
2 of that
So-
show.
So George R. R. Martin is obviously the knee-jerk comparison. It might be. I don't think either of these authors is obscure, but obviously less well-known than George R. R. Martin. The comparison I like to make is the difference between Bernard Cornwell and Stephen Lawhead. Now, I like them both very much.
Stephen Lawhead, love Stephen Lawhead.
I've heard of him.
But Bernard Cornwell generally writes crapsack worlds. Like if you read his Warlord trilogy, like his telling of Arthur, pretty much everyone except Arthur in that book is an absolute dirtbag, including the main character. And the main character's like, yeah, no, I'm an absolute scumbag.
Yeah. The only thing by Bernard Cornwell I can read is his sharp novels.
And weirdly enough, that's the one I haven't, just because there's so many of them and I don't even know where to start trying to piece together the collection. So I haven't tried.
Sharp Tiger.
Is that the one where Sean Bean stars as the main character?
Yes.
And does not
die.
And does not die. Yeah, the only time he doesn't die.
So he actually created a crap ton of controversy with that series too, because of they did the spit tap method to reload, and they're like, oh, they couldn't do that, that's fake. And then they actually had actual reenactors living historians, test that with actual rifles of the period, and it actually works. I'm like, huh. Funny how sometimes just because it's not in the book doesn't mean that's not what soldiers did. Now, whether they really did it's another story, but the fact that the sanctimonious crowd was like, no, it wouldn't have even worked. I'm like, well, practical evidence says otherwise.
Bernard and so Cornwell and Lawhead are both very good, and both tend to write in a similar setting. They both write a lot about England, different periods sometimes, but
King Raven trilogy was my favorite. Lawhead.
King Raven is excellent. His Grail Cycle is also very good.
Grail Cycle was good. Yeah.
I also liked his Patrick. He did one about St. Patrick that kind of traveled all over Europe. It was very good. But going back to what you're saying about like the morally gray sort of thing. So there is a lot more of that in Cornwell, and him and Lawhead are both good, but that is probably what I would say is the main distinction between them, is that Cornwell is writing sort of, and someone just dropped something in chat, which is kind of where I was leading to. Lawhead is more aspirational. And I think aspiration is something that is missing from a lot of works.
I basically that was my drop. Aspiration. So about a year ago, I started taking a look a little bit in taking a good hard look at what was happening in the indie movement. I had recently come across the Iron Age movement and whatnot, and everybody was trying to kind of come up with a label for what was going on, and it was all it reminded me of schools of art. We're the Iron Age, we're the Pulp Rev, we're this, we're that, and it just kind of got me. And I'm sitting there going, no, it's you guys are just like a group of artists of like impressionists and whatnot that are, what the heck were they called? They're the Dutch school, or there's some really non-Raphael or anti-Raphaelites or whatever it was. It was crazy how it got. But we're seeing something similar happen in writing now, especially in the indie sphere. I mean, it's coming in different forms, from pulp to urban fantasy to even Christian science fiction and fantasy. But it is centered about that one point, aspirationalism. We've gone through about 70 years of postmodernist theory, tearing down all the symbols, finding the cracks and the soft spots in what was originally considered to be the eternal good values of society, and have been breaking them down like rot in the forest till basically there's nothing left. And we were left basically culturally and artistically with a field of mud of all, that's why did Grimdark thrive? Because that's all there was pretty much left. And everybody was going, okay, now what? Well, I kind of coined the term aspirationalism and aspirationalist writing, where we are trying to find the eternal things that do not rot, pull it out of the mud that has been left behind, which, let's face it, what they did is they left us a fertile soil of all the things that didn't work and all the things that were able to be corruptible. But we're now starting to realize that there are things inside that morass of culture and symbolism and semiotics, where we are starting to see, okay, there are eternal truths. There are objective truths that we can start basing our work on and lifting it back up onto the pedestals that have been knocked down. We can start rebuilding pedestals that were needed for these things, these values that created civilization and culture that advanced all of humanity. And we're doing it in our own ways. And we're doing it with our own materials and our own skills. But it's seeming to be, this is where the movement is that everyone writing, well, I shouldn't say everyone writing, but a lot of people in the independent author movement, and now some of the small presses, are starting to get that same thing. I'm seeing several small presses that are like, we aren't doing grimdark. We're trying to find things to, have people look up to. And this is what I consider to be a very good answer to the postmodernist, grimdark, no hope future that was basically cyberpunk on steroids and taken to the nth degree. Exactly, Nathan. The Rack Press is looking for aspirational stories for boys. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, promote, promote. But this is the thing. We are in the vanguard, and this is, I think, the next wave of finding what's worth holding up and presenting it to the public or to the world and saying, hey, there is good left in the world. This is worthy. And it's showing in our stories, and Christian fiction is part of that as well.
The aspirational angle, they already have the Noble Bright tag. It's people trying to do that.
Yeah, but that's got the same problem as a lot of bad Christian fiction with they're pushing the evangelization. They're not trying to just illustrate by entertainment. They're trying to evangelize and say, believe thusly or else. That's my vibe I get off of what I see from Noble Bright stuff when I check their samples and stuff.
Yeah, it's all just labeling. Pulp Revolution doesn't want, you shouldn't read anything written after 1980. Well, screw you. Thank you. I'm writing in 2024. Iron Age is making traction only because you've got a YouTuber named Razorfist pushing it, and he's only got about 1 million followers.
Yeah.
So you can't really escape that. And that might actually be the label that sticks. But, right now I'm following it because it's just what I would call plain old simple storytelling. I'm sorry.
And that's the
Back
thing.
when they were,
We've gotten away from that, haven't we?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
humanity as a species, we have been obsessed with fictional narrative. We even love non-fictional narrative. I mean, who's the most popular guy at the party? The guy that tells the best dadgum story. Not
Yeah.
you, Nick.
Or the guy who brings all the booze.
Well, that too. That would be Nick. That would be Nick. But my point is,
I don't know. Does he
that
share?
even Jesus told stories. He used parables.
That's how
to
he
illustrate
taught.
his
And he
point.
drank wine just like I did. I'm just saying.
And
never
you
seen
could
me and
you
him
could
in the same
also
spot at the same time.
there.
Oh,
all
you
right,
blow it by
there
your
is a
nose.
school of thought. I'm trying to wrap up. There is a school of thought that speaks of, in particular, one parable that he told that most biblical scholars are pretty convinced was fictional, that it didn't involve real people. And that is the story of the rich man and Lazarus. That he didn't, it wasn't really real people he was talking about in that one. There's two different schools of thought on this, but my point being, he used fictional narrative and he used narrative in general to get the point across. And I think we got away from that at some point. Maybe not us in particular, but writing in general moved away from just telling a story that, has multiple points or levels. And it became, we're going to beat you over the head with something, whether you like it or not. And it's not just Christian writers that are guilty of that. We all can look at Trad Pub right now and go, holy crap,
Oh, yeah.
get it.
It
They're
is no
just
respecter
beating
of religion.
over the head with stuff, and people are kind of tired of it. And I think that's why, to your point, MD, you're seeing this little revolution.
So speaking of people being tired, I think that in the push for the nihilistic, hopeless, grim, dark, gray wash over everything, they've forgotten that people are in desperate need of aspirational figures. In becoming Orthodox, what I've found is that the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church have their saints, and the Pentecostal Church would insist that those are all invalid. There's no such thing. But they need something like it, so they invent them. They have Nate Saint, they have Billy Graham. They elevate more not conventional, but more contemporary figures to the same status of aspirational figure, because they've abandoned the traditional aspirational figures of the saints of the church. So I just thought it was interesting when I was looking into saints and the purpose they seem to serve in a lot of the church, and the iconoclasm of a lot of the Protestant denominations. I mean, putting that aside, they've had to find a way to replace that function, because it is such a necessary function.
All right, so it sounds like there's a lot more on the topic. So Angela and I have been talking in the side chat. We have some ideas we will come up with future, not slants on it, future dives into the concepts that we discussed, because this was just supposed to be broad strokes intro. So with that out of the way, as we hit the band hammer of ending the show, we're going to let all of our guests tell us what they're working on at the moment, how we can stalk them. I mean, find them on the internet. So I'm just going to go round robin of the square. So we're going to start with you, Herman.
Well, I'm now preparing my second Revenant in the Cult book, which will be the conclusion, which I'm looking to release on March 3rd of 2025, finishing up the audiobook tracks this evening, as a matter of fact. And I'm also working on the next book, which the book after that, which is going to be Odo, another Odo story. Another character I said I'd never write about again, and I'm doing it again. You can find me anywhere: Twitter, Facebook, Minds, Getter Gab.
All the places. All right. Yeah. We will link to all that in the show notes. What about you, Declan?
Hanging out at Starbucks, Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I'm currently releasing my Honeymoon from Hell series. It is an urban fantasy where I've got, one character is a heartless, bloodthirsty killer. The other's a vampire. I've got a vampire who goes to confession. Yes, it hurts. And she takes her she takes her daily dose of blood from the chalice at Mass. And for the more evil vampires, they use communion wafers with suicide pills, that sort of thing. It's actually a follow-up series to my Love at First Bite quartet. It's like, well, till after, here's a happily ever after. Well, here's till death do you part. And it's like, yeah, well, we're just going to have a nice, simple honeymoon around the country, and everything tries to kill them. So it's fun. I've got 5 books in the series. Book 1 came out last month, Blood Country. Book 2 came out this month, and the next 3 will come out February, April, June of next year. So, yes, I wrote all of them at the same time. So it's like, screw it. I'm told rapid release is good. So I'm working on that, and I'm waiting on edits from Blaine Pardo on the Land and Sea book I worked with him on, called On Tiber's Edge, and I think that's quite enough.
All right, what about you, Michael? What are you working on, and how can we stalk you on the internet?
Well, you can always find me at my website, michaellavoice.com. All the links to everything I do are there, links to shows that I've been on, my Substack blog, all of that. Right now, we're gleefully looking forward to the release of Gladius Leagues, which is takes place in a future in which we've eliminated warfare because we have warfare by proxy via a combat sport called the Gladius Leagues, which is a combination of MechWarrior, the NFL, and the WWE. And in all of our wanderings in the universe, we never ran across aliens. Lo and behold, they show up, and they're the very worst kind, the ones that want to eat us. And the only line of defense we have are a bunch of pre-Madonna warrior athletes who wouldn't know how to be a real soldier if you put a gun to their head. So that's going to be fun. Working on a Space Navy series with our favorite Kiwi, Peter Stanley. That's going to be, we're just working on that. We don't have release dates. We don't even have a publisher yet. We're just working it. And I'm also developing the Charlie Hawk stories into a full series of novels in which a bunch of maintenance platoon chuckleheads end up behind enemy lines and use their skills at repairing things to do the opposite and become the best saboteurs in history.
Friggy standing. All right, Mr. M.D. Boncher.
Well, I am right now in the process of getting 3 stories ready for different anthology submissions, plus another novel that I'm going to be sending in as a submission to a small press that is going to be a sort of military sci-fi explanation that I am going currently under the title of Mech Family Robinson. You can figure out a lot from just the title alone. But that's sort of the hottest things going on my plate right now. Otherwise, I have to get back to writing the conclusion of the trilogy story arc for Akinawazi Saga, or my darling bride is miming the use of a splitting maul on my ankles. So that's an or else from the missus. And then hopefully I'll be able to get back to a whole bunch of other projects that I have that are building up in my head for my Tales from the Dream Nebula series, including hopefully doing some books, some gaming books of all things for tabletop RPG conversions. So
nice.
I've met your missus. I would take that seriously.
I just watched her split a whole bunch of cherry with an 8-pound splitting maul. So she's got both. She's got the wood blocks, and she knows where I sleep.
That's not scary at all. All right, Angela, what are you working on at the moment, and how can we find you on the Wild Wilder interwebs? And as usual, all the links are in the show notes.
Yeah, so I'm working on a couple things right now, mostly a fantasy standalone novel again, and I am wrapping up the urban fantasy series with my co-author, Irene Sylvan. So that was originally supposed to be just 3 books. We wrote the 3 books, and now it's going to be 5. But books 2 and 3 will launch next year as well. So
that happens.
Mostly those kind of projects right now. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Substack also.
All right, and last but certainly not least, Nathan, what are you working on at the moment, and how can we find you?
So at the moment, I'm working on raising a newborn, but in the time that I can find around that, it's funny, Boncher mentioned he was working on a tabletop book. I've been doing much the same. if you recall the fellow I brought with me for the Dog Soldiers video, Richard, in conjunction with his cryptid podcast, we've been putting together a cryptid tabletop, and I've been writing a lot of setting information for him. That's sort of on the back burner while he wraps a few other things up. I had a concept that I was going to submit to Pogue 1, but Baby kind of stole some of my writing time, so I'm probably not going to make that deadline. So I'm just going to look a little further out and see what I can try to slot in. But that, well, like I said at the start of the show, a little bit of background and copy work for a nonprofit or two, and yeah, mostly, I guess Twitter is probably my primary public facing page. I have a YouTube channel, and that's what the Fighting Words podcast is on, but that's all pretty well out of date because that's from back when I used to hit nerds with foam. I do a different kind of LARPing now, the sort that involves chest rigs and 60 round mags. So don't really do as much of the thuggery anymore.
All right. And this is the part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind. On the reviewing platforms, your reviews help the right readers find the right book. So do your part. It really does help. And with that, you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the pitch shoots, the rumbles, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We have our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Send all of your shenanigans to Madam Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. We have our website over there on the Spotify site. It is a bunch of gobbledygook. Don't hate us, hate Spotify. But if you go to the link tree, click the Spotify, you can go there and support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on. Or you can support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comments section that is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it flows out of their eyeballs. And if you want some of that for yourself, you want your own caffeinated crack, you can use the code podcastgrunts, 10% off. Link is in the show notes. You get a discount, we get a kickback. It's a win-win, and you help keep the lights on. So with that, I'd like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And with that, we are out. Thank you, everyone, for coming on. And next time I'll know better than to get so many opinionated people in one place. It was glorious, but woof. All right. And with that, we're hitting the end button.